Thank you.
Shalom Alechem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Shalom, Shalom. Mi Melech, Malachei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu, HaKadosh. Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Shalom, Shalom. Mi Melech, Malachei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shalom, Shalom. Peace be upon you, angels divine. Shabbat Shalom, u'mevorach. Baruchuni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Shalom, Shalom. Mi Melech, Malachei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shalom, Shalom. Tzeitkhem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Shalom, Shalom. Mi Melech, Malachei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shalom, Shalom. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shalom, Shalom. Shalom, Shalom. Shalom, Shalom.
Good evening, Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to everybody as we join together to participate in the installation of Rabbi Jonathan Cohen. We're all so thrilled to be a part of this signal event, and we're just so glad that you are here with us as well. I want to give a special welcome to Rabbi Cohen's family and to Yael Senemad's family as well. We're delighted to have you here with us. Also to our distinguished rabbis. We're so pleased to have you, and our distinguished guests as well. I also want to say how pleased we are that so many of our beloved congregants are here as well. And I want to welcome those who are live streaming from places far and wide. Who have I forgotten? At this point, I want to invite forward to light our candles and to lead us in blessings over light and wine, Imam Ismael Chartier, the Reverend Mitta Javarzadeh, Rabbi Jen Lader, and Rabbi Uri Regev. The blessings begin on page 3.
Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them. So may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our day be among those who kindle light.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and into our lives.
Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
Heaven and the earth were finished, and all their array. On the seventh day, God finished all the work that God has been doing, and God ceased on the seventh day from all the work that God has done. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because on it God ceased from all work of creation that God has done.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotoi v'ratzavanu v'shavah kodsho b'yahava uvratzon.
We continue now in our prayer books on page 6. We enter this sanctuary to welcome Shabbat. Within these walls, we sit surrounded by numberless generations. Our ancestors built the synagogue as a visible sign of God's presence in their midst. Throughout our long history and our endless wanderings, it has endured, a beacon of truth, love, and justice for all humanity. Its presence guided our ancestors to lives of righteousness, holding up to them a vision of their truest selves. Continuing together, now we in our turn come into this sanctuary to affirm the sacredness of our lives. May we enter this place in peace. May holiness wrap around us as we cross its threshold. Weariness, doubt, the flaws within our human hearts, the harshness of the weak, let these drop away at the door. Brightness of Shabbat, let peace settle upon us as we lift our hearts in prayer, turning now to page 20 for Lecha Dodi.
Lecha Dodi likrat kara לכדודי לקראת כלה, בשבת נקבילה, שבת שלום ומבורך, שבת שלום ומבורך, שבת שלום ומבורך, שבת שלום ומבורך, לכדודי לקראת כלה, בשבת נקבילה, שבת שלום ומבורך, שבת שלום ומבורך, שבת שלום ומבורך, שבת שלום ומבורך, שבת שלום ומבורך. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני אין סגולה. בואי כלה, בואי כלה. לכדודי לקראת כלה, בשבת נקבילה, שבת שלום ומבורך, שבת שלום ומבורך, שבת שלום ומבורך, שבת שלום ומבורך, שבת שלום ומבורך.
We turn now to page 26. Will you please rise for the Chatzi Kaddish?
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה, יעלמה תברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכם כל יומכם ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בעגלה בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו
Shmei Rabba Nevarach Le'olam Olam Le'amaya Yitbarach
וישתבח יתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי קודשה לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה
Tushbechata Lechem-ata Tamid Yadrava Amen.
Turning now to page 28 for the call to worship, the Baruch Hu. together. Praise Adonai, to whom praise is due forever. Praise be Adonai, to whom praise is due now and forever. On page 33, we read together. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kivor Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Baruch Shem Kivor Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Adonai Echad.
Together, hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. Will you please be seated? And I'm so glad to invite to the Bima to lead us in the V'ahavta, which is found on page 36, Eden and Yasha Cohen.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושינתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך וביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם מאוד על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם לארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
We continue on page 39. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and on earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt, we were delivered. At Sinai, we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again, we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha neder b'kodesh nora, nora, nora tehilot, o sefele. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha neder b'kodesh nora, nora, nora tehilot, o sefele. Malachutecha ravanecha, bokeh hayam lifnei Moshe. Zeiri, zeiri, anu v'amiru. Malchutcha ravanecha, bokeh hayam lifnei Moshe. Zeiri, zeiri, anu v'amiru. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha neder b'kodesh nora, nora, nora tehilot, o sefele. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha neder b'kodesh nora, nora, nora tehilot, o sefele. Adonai yimloch leolam avaret. Adonai yimloch leolam avaret. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha neder b'kodesh nora, nora, nora tehilot, o sefele, o sefele, o sefele.
I'd like to share an original piece that I wrote this evening. It's an interpretation of the Hashkey prayer written in honor and celebration of Rabbi Jonathan Cohen's installation. As the sun sinks and darkness descends, we prepare for this great moment. Perhaps it will only be a millisecond, perhaps a minute, or perhaps an hour. We find ourselves straddling the day that just was and the day that is yet to be. As we rest and reflect, we pray that you, Adonai, will spread the shelter of your wings over us, allowing us to suspend ourselves in time and space just for a moment. Guard us as we go out from today and enter into tomorrow. Blessed are you, Adonai, the one who spreads the shelter of peace over us and all the people and places we cherish. Amen.
Hashkey Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu L'chaim. Hashkey Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom V'hamidenu Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom Ve'omidenu Shomreinu L'chaim Ushmor Tzidkenu Shalom, me'ata v'ad
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom Ve'hamidenu Shomreinu L'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom Ve'hamidenu Shomreinu L'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Shalom, Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu L'chaim.
Page 45. We are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable, without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time. Please rise and join us in the tefillah.
Adonai, Adonai, Sifatai, Sifatai, Tiftach, Adonai, Ufi Agit Hilatecha, אבותינו ואימותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק, ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל, ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומר חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר, מושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל.
You may be seated. We continue on page 61. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocates among the nations. Make contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of all lands. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamvarech et amo Yisrael, b'shalom.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim le'olam. Ki ata melech adon lechol hashalom.
page 253. As we greet Shabbat in joy and celebration, we also take a moment to recognize that not everything is perfect, and many people who we love and care about may be in need of a prayer for healing, whether it be health-related, emotional, spiritual. I invite you, if there's someone you're thinking of at this time, you'd like to say the Misha Berach prayer, I invite you to say their name in your heart, or if you wish, out loud.
Ed Hershey, Ken Gordon.
We take all of them into our hearts as we join together in the Misha Berach prayer.
Misha Berach Avoteinu Mikor HaBracha Le'imoteinu. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Berach Imoteinu Mikor HaBracha Le'avoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
We now take a moment to pray silently.
Hallelujah, b'kodsho, hallelujah, b'gvurotav, hallelujah, b'teka shofar. Hallelujah, b'rov kulo, hallelujah, b'teka shofar, hallelujah, b'nava v'chilor. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, b'tov u'machol, hallelujah, b'minim ve'ugav, hallelujah, b'tzirtzilei shamayim. Hallelujah, b'tzirtzilei truah, kol hanshama tichalaya. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
During its 169 years, 11 remarkable and renowned senior rabbis have led the Temple-Tifereth Israel. 5 of them, in particular, initiated changes and introduced practices that have had a dramatic and enduring effect on our congregation, on the Reform movement, and on the world. Their character, courage, and inspiration set the stage for our congregation's future. Rabbi Isidore Kalish came to Cleveland in 1850 as the first rabbi of the Temple-Tifereth Israel. Immediately upon his arrival in America, Kalish sought to articulate an American Judaism that would be socially progressive, integrated into American society, and informed by new developments in scholarship and science. Jewish life in Cleveland was young, and the affiliated traditional community was small. Within a few years, the fledgling congregation would find its first home on Huron Street. Rabbi Kalish was a key organizer of the first Conference of American Rabbis that took place in Cleveland in 1855, and Kalish co-edited the first Jewish prayer book to be published in North America, Minhag America, with Rabbi Isaac Mayer Wise. Led by Rabbi Kalish, the Temple-Tifereth Israel sought to mold a new Jewish identity, highlighting these principal ingredients: Jewish integration into and acceptance in American life, Judaism's vibrancy and relevance, and an emphasis on Jewish teaching, learning, and scholarship. By the time young Rabbi Moses Grease came to Cleveland in 1892, the temple was in the last stages of building its new home on East 55th Street. The congregation served more than 120 families and had a vibrant religious school of 80 children. There was a sense of energy about the place, and Rabbi Grease continued the momentum. Rabbi Grease, who was considered a young radical, led in the creation of the Temple Women's Association and became an advocate of women's rights in religious and civic life. He launched Friday evening Vesper services and further shifted religious worship and learning from Saturday to Sunday so that all who worked on the Sabbath could participate. Hebrew was largely removed from the liturgy, and the Jewish prayer service was further Americanized. Greece built strong interfaith collaborations and relationships and became a highly recognized and valued civic leader. Along with 8 other local leaders, Rabbi Grease was a founder of the Federation of Charities for the Jewish Community of Cleveland, an organization that would become the Cleveland Jewish Federation. His rabbinic leadership was nationally recognized, and he was elected president of the Central Conference of American Rabbis, the Reform Rabbinic Leadership Organization, in 1913. During his rabbinate, the temple had grown more than 5-fold, and its impact on the greater Cleveland community had increased immeasurably. The dynamic religious school of 80 had grown to 900 children. Rabbi Grease had transformed Cleveland's Temple-Tifereth Israel into one of America's leading congregations. Abba Hillel Silver followed Rabbi Grease in 1970 and was already known for his outstanding Jewish learning and charismatic leadership. He emerged from HUC as a rising Zionist star, where he was a staunch and consistent proponent of civil rights, the labor movement, and Zionism. Within a few years of arriving at the temple, Rabbi Silver led the congregation in an ambitious construction project on the corner of 105th Street and Ansel Road. This new world-class facility would relocate the Temple-Tifereth Israel's home to the heart of Cleveland's civic and cultural life. Within 2 decades, the congregation more than doubled in size. In the early 1940s, with America now fully engaged in World War II and news of the Holocaust spreading, Rabbi Silver became the most prominent American advocate for the urgent extraction of Jews from Nazi-dominated Europe and the creation of a homeland for the Jewish people in Palestine. At that time, Rabbi Silver was leading a temple of approximately 800 families that included sons and daughters who served in the United States military, a number of whom were injured and killed. He commissioned the Schick windows, which hang in our building today, to honor those soldiers. No other leader did more to unify American Zionist efforts towards the establishment of the State of Israel than Rabbi Silver, highlighted by his historic speech to the United Nations in 1947.
In Palestine, they will see what the Jewish people, inspired by the hope of reconstituting their national home after
Silver was widely recognized as the most prominent American Jewish leader of his time. Following Abba Hillel Silver's death in 1963, his son Rabbi Daniel Jeremy Silver assumed the religious leadership of the congregation and became the scholar, teacher, rabbi of the modern American age. Rabbi Daniel Silver led the temple as the American dream became realized for so many of the Jews of this country and our city. With the movement of the Jewish community of Cleveland eastwards, Silver led the congregation in the construction and opening of its Beechwood branch in 1969 while maintaining the centrality of the main University Circle facility. The hallmark of Silver's rabbinate was the combination of innovative Jewish learning, arts, and social programs, along with the expression of contemporary Judaism. His innovations and support for our growing Museum of Judaica provided the foundation of our widely esteemed and celebrated collection today. By the end of the 1980s, the temple had become a beacon and symbol of American Reform Judaism. Rabbi Richard Block's arrival to the temple followed a distinguished career as a rabbi and leader in the Reform movement, both in the United States and Israel. His 17-year tenure at the temple was punctuated by events of the early years of the 21st century and their deep impact on the Jewish community. Under Rabbi Block's leadership, the temple continued to innovate, grow, and thrive. Rabbi Block introduced new worship offerings and educational programs to engage young families in the temple, such as Rock My Soul Shabbat, TGIS, and Shabbaton. With his support, the temple arts program grew and thrived, which enticed more and more congregants to engage in the congregation. Rabbi Block facilitated a partnership with the congregation, Case Western Reserve University, and the Maltz Foundation to renovate and reimagine the Silver Sanctuary at University Circle. He then spearheaded the expansion and renovation of the Beechwood facility in partnership with the Mandel Foundation and temple leadership through the successful Temple Tomorrow project. Like those who preceded him, Rabbi Block provided leadership for the Reform movement, both in this country and beyond. He was elected as president of the CCAR in 2013, exactly 100 years following the CCAR presidency of Moses Greece. Throughout his rabbinate at the temple, Rabbi Block served numerous Cleveland Jewish community organizations, has been a prolific writer and commentator, and an ardent supporter of the alliance between the United States and Israel. Under Rabbi Block's leadership, the Temple-Tifereth Israel became a model for a 21st century congregation. The inspiration, commitment, and courage of these five giants provided the platform for our congregation to thrive and flourish. Rabbi Jonathan Cohen has inherited this legacy of excellence and has the vision, wisdom, and spirit to take us even higher. This congregation stands with him as he leads us through the next chapter of our beloved temple story. May God bless Rabbi Cohen and this holy congregation.
In the garden there's a tree planted by someone who only imagined me. What love, what vision. I marvel at the gift. No fruit could be sweeter than this. I'm standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me. As my people went from land to land, something passed from hand to hand.
Of the ancient laws for good and glories.
Here we study the book we study. It's the way we study the way.
I'm standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me. I'm standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me.
Today my life is full of choice, because a young man raised his voice, because a young girl took a chance. I am freedom's inheritance. Years ago they crossed the sea, and they made a life that's come to me. I'm standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me. I'm standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me.
So in the garden I'll plant a seed, a tree of life for you to read. The fruit will ripen in the sun. The words will sound when I am gone. These are the things I pass along: the book, the fruit, and the song.
I'm standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me. I'm standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me. I'm standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me.
As part of our installation ceremony, we are truly honored to be able to have Rabbis Ellenson and Joseph to come forward to share their words of wisdom.
Shabbat Shalom. Isn't it wonderful to be together for such a joyous evening, given what faces us around the world today? It is such an honor and joy to celebrate with you, Rabbi Cohen, your formal welcome to this great congregation, the Temple-Tifereth Israel. As you know very, very well, the 12th senior rabbi, Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Cohen. My friends, the installation of a new rabbi is a tremendous amount of fun for me, and so much so that I can't resist telling a rabbi joke. How many rabbis does it take to screw in a light bulb? The answer, 10. 1 to change the bulb, and 9 to say, my friends, this reminds me of a Hasidic story. But I believe I'm here not to tell rabbi jokes, but rather I'm here to say something about you, Jonathan Cohen. I'm here because of our relationship of over 20 years. I want to share some things about you and to you that come from my time with you. As a faculty colleague at Hebrew Union College, as your teacher in rabbinical school, partnering with you when you were our dean, and most importantly, as your friend, celebrating your marriage to Yael, the births of your children, the day you became an American citizen, And even when Dory and I were with you and Yael those many years ago in Paris, sitting in that very cafe where the two of you first met. So I've been observing you over all these years. I know that you remember that I was a member of the search committee that brought you to the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in Cincinnati some 20 years ago. Your references were stellar. Now we got to meet face to face, and I tried to figure out this young Israeli with a British accent and a British PhD, serious and brilliant, kind and gentle, and with that great twinkle in his eyes that I'm sure your congregation has picked up on these 10 months. And gradually we got to know one another and to trust each other. Clearer and clearer it became to me that you were and are something very special. You are my kind of teacher. Your passion for your students rivals your passion for your scholarship. Both compete for your time and for your attention. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Hessel teaches us, what we need more than anything else today is not textbooks, but text people. It is the personality of the teacher, which is the text our students read, the text they will never forget. You, Jonathan Cohen, are the text this congregation is reading, and a wonderful, powerful text it is. How blessed is this congregation to have the benefit of receiving your fullest and most passionate time and attention. I know how much you care about connecting to people. Because of these months of being in the midst of this congregation, many of those here know already you are a super listener. Your eyes are not wandering away from a person with whom you are speaking toward the next person. As is perceived of a great listener, you notice how the speaker looks. Is she upset? Is he tired? What is her concern? You give fully of your attention and your time. And Jonathan Cohen, you are a man of Torah. This congregation will see that you know the words of Torah, and most importantly, you live the words of Torah. You are, and you must be, as a rabbi of this congregation, the text being studied and lived. In this day, life and living seem more difficult, more complicated, in some ways more lonely and alienating than ever. People need emotional and physical places where life becomes purposeful and meaningful. You, Rabbi Jonathan Cohen, will make sure this congregation truly is a sanctuary, a holy place, a safe and protected space where people come in from out of the cold. It is in this place that you will lead and partner with this community, the temple, so that it is here where they find comfort. Here is where they find friends. Here is where they feel at home. Here is a place of Torah where people treat one another with compassion and respect. We read in the Torah, Genesis 12:1, the Eternal said to Abram, "Go forth from your land, your birthplace, your father's house, to the land I will show you." Well, Jonathan, this, my dear friend, is your journey. From Israel to Europe, France to the United States, to Great Britain, to Cincinnati, and now to Cleveland. This is your journey. The Eternal is showing you the way. This is your life's direction. This is your purpose. May your rabbinate here be one that enriches life's meaning for all who are co-creators with you of this sacred community. And I say to that, Amen.
After Rabbi Joseph's words, I think I have to begin by saying everything has been said that should be said, but I haven't yet said it. It is a great honor, and I'm so appreciative, Jonathan, that you invited me on this night to this very holy congregation. We saw the film a moment ago, and I hope that for all of you who are here tonight and who are members, particularly of this congregation, Tiferet Israel, that you understand the place that this congregation occupies in the history of the Jewish people. Rabbi Abba Hillel Silver played a greater role than any other individual in the diplomatic efforts that were required for Hakamat Medinat Yisrael, for the establishment of the State of Israel. And he spoke for Jews throughout the world for decades. Rabbi Daniel Silver, and I see that his beautiful Adele is here tonight, a very close friend for many, many years. Daniel represented for me, when I was a rabbinical student at the College Institute, a model of what a rabbi should be, an individual who reached out and guided his community, and simultaneously was a scholar of immense, immense proportions. Indeed, I first encountered Rabbi Daniel Silver when I was 21 years old, a student at the University of Virginia, and I read what I know is a bestseller that probably all of you have read, The Maimonidean Controversy of 1344. It was written by Rabbi Silver as initially his doctoral dissertation at Harvard University. And Adele, I'm certain you read every single word and discussed it with him. And actually, it set a model for me of what it was that I wanted to be in my own rabbinate. And later, of course, I came to be very good friends with Sarah, your daughter, in my work as president of the College Institute, and her working with Alan Slivka and his foundation in New York. And Rick and Susie Block have been the closest of friends for many years. I have to confess, Jonathan, that my journey to the presidency of the Hebrew Union College began actually with a dinner that my wife Jackie and I had with Susie and Rick at the Pacific Association of Reform Rabbis many, many, many years ago, where Rabbi Block indicated to me that perhaps this would be a position that I should consider. And again, the leadership that you, Rick, have displayed in our movement has been exemplary to all of us for these past decades. So, Jonathan, I want to say that you are a worthy chuliyah, you are a worthy link in this very special chain of tradition. And I want to speak about my relationship with you as well. I had the honor of participating in your chuppah when you and Yael married. And I was able to indicate on that occasion, Jonathan, to your father, and I see your brother and sister are here today, that I knew they always dreamt of Jonathan becoming a rabbi. They had no other dream of him when he was a young boy in Israel, England, and France. But with your family here tonight, Yael, I know that a lifelong dream of yours and your family's has been realized, that as a young girl growing up in Paris, I know you dreamt that maybe one day you would become the Rebbitzin of Tiferet Israel in Cleveland. As Rabbi Joseph has phrased it, life moves in many, many different directions. I first came to know you, Jonathan, as Sam has indicated, when you were appointed to the faculty of the Hebrew Union College. And my relationship with you has certainly only grown stronger over the years. Anyone here who has ever been a teacher or a student knows how very deeply, students love their teachers. But the reality is, teachers love their students as much, if not more. In 2012, when I ordained Jonathan as a rabbi among the people Israel, I felt that it was really one of the greatest moments of zechut, of privilege, that I had in my entire rabbinate and in my years that I did serve as president of the College Institute. To stand with you in front of the Ark at Plum Street Temple was a moment of intimacy that I can tell you I cherish in my memory and that is deep within my heart now and forever. And to have worked with you during your years as Dean of the College Institute and now to participate in this evening is such great joy and privilege for me. Within the rabbinic tradition, particularly the Sephardic one, there are 3 titles that are given to a rabbi. A rabbi is called a marbitz Torah among the Sephardim, someone who teaches and spreads Torah. I cannot exaggerate for you how much Torah Rabbi Cohen knows. He is one of the great scholars of Talmud and responsa literature in the world today. He is currently the chair of the Responsa Committee, the Committee on Jewish Law, for our Central Conference of American Rabbis, and he occupies that position because he is universally respected for the knowledge that he possesses and the ability he has to apply the lessons of Torah, the teachings of our tradition, to the contemporaneous problems of our age. Rabbinic authenticity is contingent on rabbinic learning. And there is no rabbi in the country, in the world, who is more authentic than Jonathan. But to be a marbitz Torah is not sufficient. A rabbi also needs to be, according to our tradition, a chacham. A rabbi needs to know how to use discretion, how to be wise, how to be a sage. And Jonathan, as Sam indicated, is kind, and he is gentle, he has empathy, he has concern, he has values, and he has principles. Jonathan possesses every midah, every positive characteristic that we look for in a rabbi. And your community is blessed to not only have a marbitz Torah, but a chacham, a sage, is your rabbi now. And finally, according to the Sephardim, a rabbi is also referred to as a chaver, a friend, a companion. In Pirkei Avot it says, Aseh lecha rav u'knei lecha chaver. Make for yourself a rabbi, but acquire for yourself a friend. In this community, part of what you're going to see is that Jonathan Cohen has been employed by you to serve you as your rabbi. But I can tell you from my relationship with him, what you're going to ultimately understand is that Jonathan and Yael will become your friends. They will be part of your simchas. They'll be there to comfort you during times of mourning. And he will be an ear to whom you can open up about the deepest, deepest concerns and cares of your life. Jonathan Cohen is in many ways a tzaddik. He is a righteous person. Does not mean Jonathan is perfect, but he's fairly close. But I would remind you then that the Midrash says, "Ila ratzut tzadikim hayu yecholim livro olamot." If righteous people will it, they are able to create worlds. But to you in this community, I would say, he cannot create a world alone. The achievements of this congregation that were highlighted under all of your rabbinic leaders, and certainly in recent years under Rabbi Block, were done, and this is your part of this evening. Because these rabbis had shutafim, they had partners who worked with them and who made it possible for the dreams and the visions that they put forth, they made it possible for them to be achieved and realized. So on this night, what I would remind you of is that you have an exceptional, exceptional person who will not only be your rabbi, but who will be your friend. But I ask you to remember that you need to be with him, as all of us are required to be with the Holy One, shutafim, partners, in the creation of this community. And if you respond to him in this way, then the legacy of this congregation that has been bequeathed to Rabbi Cohen and to all of you will be a legacy upon which Rabbi Cohen will build in the years ahead. One final lesson. In Jewish religious tradition, there is a notion of hidardarut hadorot, that each generation, as it moves away from Sinai, declines. Im harishonim hayu kamalachim azanu kivnei adam, the Talmud says. If our ancestors were like angels, then we're like human beings. And if they were like people, as anu kachamorim, then we are like donkeys compared to them. But, and I say this because of Jonathan's knowledge of Jewish law, hilchata kavatra'e, the halakha law is always decided by the latest and not the earliest authorities. And the rabbis ask, how can that be if in fact our ancestors were greater than we were? And that is because the rabbis say, it may be that we don't have the vision of our ancestors, and perhaps the greatness of an Abba Hillel Silver can never be fully replicated. But we have the good fortune to stand on the shoulders of Rabbi Silver and Rabbi Block. And Jonathan, you will be a person who builds on their legacy and helps to make this congregation even a greater one that will serve the needs of the Jewish people and the larger world in the years ahead. V'yishlach bracha v'hatzlacha b'chol ma'aseh yadecha im kol Yisrael achecha v'achotecha v'nomar amen. May God send blessing and success upon this congregation, upon Jonathan and Yael, along with everyone in the household of Israel and the larger human community, and let us say, Amen.
We are gifts and we are blessings. We are history in song. We are hope and we are healing. We are learning to be strong. We are words and we are stories. We are pictures of the past. We are carriers of wisdom, not the first and not the last. L'dor vador nagid God lecha. L'dor vador we protect this chain. From generation to generation, L'dor vador these lips will praise your name. Looking back on the journey that we carry in our hearts, from the shadow of the mountain to the waters that would part, we are blessed and we are holy. We are children of your way. And the words that bring us meaning, we will have the strength to say. L'dor vador nagid lecha. L'dor vador we protect this chain. From generation to generation, L'dor vador these lips will praise your name. L'dor vador nagid lecha. L'dor vador we protect this chain. From generation to generation, L'dor vador these lips will praise your
I'm pleased now to invite to the bema Rabbi Schwartz and Rabbi Presand.
It is an honor for me to be here this evening and to have this opportunity to wish you all Shabbat Shalom. I have known and admired Rabbi Cohen for many years in the various positions he has held. As a faculty member of HUCJIR, he visited my congregation, Monmouth Reformed Temple in New Jersey, as a scholar in residence, where we quickly discovered, as I am sure you have, that he is a man of great knowledge and intellect, a consummate teacher and scholar. As dean of the Cincinnati campus, his unique abilities for leadership were evident and welcome, a model for our students and a gift to our community. I was fortunate to be present at his ordination, and he has always treated me with great respect, inviting me to participate in many special occasions at the College Institute. So I am grateful this evening to be here and to participate as he and you publicly affirm the covenant into which you enter in service to God and the Jewish people and all humanity. I'm also grateful to be here because it brings me home to Cleveland, where I was born and grew up. You probably know that my family belonged to Beth Israel, the West Temple, but I have always had relatives, even today, who belong to this congregation. Like many of you, I stood in awe of Rabbi Abba Hillel Silver, Alav HaShalom, who contributed so much to the history of Reform Judaism and our love for Israel. I was a teenager when he died, just a few days after the assassination of President Kennedy. But I remember how Cleveland lovingly embraced him and his legacy, a legacy that all of you continue to represent, a legacy that we will see visually when Rabbi Block passes the Torah to Rabbi Cohen. Rabbi Block, who has made his own unique contributions to the Reform movement, passing on the legacy that this congregation represents. I have always been very proud to be from Cleveland, a city known for the strength and generosity of its Jewish community and for its ability to nurture people wanting to become rabbis. Having the honor this evening to sit next to Adele Silver, I was reminded of another memory. When I decided I wanted to be a rabbi, my parents found many different ways of encouraging me. And my father had this idea of taking a book, and the book he chose was, I believe it's called Choose Life, a collection of sermons of Rabbi Abba Hillel Silver. And it was his idea that he was going to go around to all the rabbis of Cleveland and have them sign it for me to encourage me. Unfortunately, my father was ill and he did not live much longer. He knew that I was admitted to Hebrew Union College, but he was not alive for my ordination. But I have that book on my shelf in an honored place, and the first person to sign it was Daniel Jeremy Silver. So it's an honor to be with you this evening. Now, when Jonathan called and asked me to say a few words, he suggested that I give a charge, not only to him, but to the congregation. So I thought a lot about synagogue leadership and what it means, and believe it or not, I've been a rabbi almost 50 years now. I'm getting close. And perhaps the most important lesson I learned from my years as a congregational rabbi is the need, as Rabbi Ellenson said, for rabbi and congregation to be partners in accomplishing the work of the congregation and making a real difference in the community as well. And so I thought I would like to tell you a story about the Baal Shem Tov. And I want you in the future to think of this story whenever you decide you're too tired to come to services, or you really don't want to serve on that committee, any of those things. I want you to remember this story. The Baal Shem Tov and his disciples would daven together every morning. Shabbat was especially celebrated with a little bit of schnapps and a piece of cake after the service. And the wonderful aroma of the food would waft into the sanctuary, and stomachs would grumble, and no one would think of leaving until all were finished. The Baal Shem Tov would daven longer than anyone else. And every week, the students would think about going to the Kiddush. But the Baal Shem Tov would still be covered in his talit, swaying intently back and forth, and all would wait patiently until he finished his journey. But one morning, before the Rebbe arrived, a disciple whispered to the others, "You know, each week we wait until he is finished. And each week my stomach grumbles louder and louder with anticipation. Why don't we sneak away quietly and grab a bite and then come back in? He would never even notice, so engrossed is he in his prayers." The others began to protest, but in the end their appetites won over. That morning, as they watched the Baal Shem Tov sway and utter prayers beneath his talit, they began to leave the sanctuary in utter silence. And suddenly the Baal Shem Tov lifted up his head and found them. "Where are you going?" he cried. With embarrassment, they confessed. "But how did you know we were leaving?" They asked, and he said, they said, we didn't even make a sound. He responded softly, "When I pray, it is as though there is a ladder stretching from heaven to earth, and I ascend that ladder, but you hold up the rungs. And when you left, I fell." Creating a temple family, building a spiritual community in which people share times of joy and moments of difficulty requires rabbi and congregation working together, because together we always reach higher. To Rabbi Cohen on this night we say, "There lies before you a mountain of challenge and opportunity. May you draw strength from those around you, from our people and our past, and from our God. We ask for you and all your temple family patience and courage, clear vision and wise judgment, purity of heart and unity of purpose. May the covenantal relationship you affirm this night be one of joy, accomplishment, creativity, wholeness, and harmony. And may you all be blessed with a peaceful sense of life's purpose, with much success, everything good, and may God be with you. Hatzlacha v'shalom v'kol tuv, v'Adonai imcha. Amen.
What an honor it was to be asked to come today. How privileged I am to be number 4. Every text has been taken. Every example I had is gone. Indeed, I have already said it to myself. So I will give one gift, I hope, to the congregation, because I know you are starting off, even though you're 10 months already together, you are just getting to know one another. And it's hard to get to know a new rabbi. You've had such great examples before you, such leaders, and each one has his own way, his own special way of being. In fact, you have noticed that Rabbi Cohen has this odd Israeli accent, and I wanted to help you with few translations of things that he says, just so you are better able to follow him. The first is a use of a word that he loved at the Hebrew Union College, and I wonder if you know its full, broad meaning. It is the word dire. Very often at the Hebrew Union College, Dr. Ellenson, I'm not sure you're aware, but things were very dire at our campus. And the meaning of this word is broad. It means both petty things, things you might call dire that are really not so dire, like we have run out of money. But we always seem to dig some more up somewhere, so we were okay. But the truest, deepest meaning of dire, and I'm not even going to use my full accent on this one, dire, the truest meaning of that word for Jonathan is, a true emergent cause, is that there is no more dark roast coffee available. And all that is left is blueberry mocha flavored coffee. The other gift I want to give you is to understand that sometimes when he says particular words, he adds syllables to them. They are most often syllables in the vowels. Most of us were just ordained a rabbi, but he is a rabbi. And I mean, up until I really came to know you, Jonathan, I thought my name was Julie, but indeed it's Julie. So if he is talking to one of your children, as you have that wonderful moment of bar or bat mitzvah, he's given the blessing, and you cannot identify your child's name, you just need to take some of the vowels out, and you will have it correct. Now, Jonathan, I have for you just one example of how you are also learning a new language, and that is the change from the language of studentese, rabbinic student talk, to congregantese. And so when a congregant comes up to you after services and says, Rabbi, we must talk. I need an appointment with you very soon as possible. You should not understand it as if a student, a rabbinic student, was speaking to you. And that emergency is that all of the books that he needs for his rabbinic thesis has already been checked out by the faculty and are no longer available. That kind of emergency is not of a concern here. Or the concern that, yes, indeed, we do not have a gym any longer, and we do not have free coffee. But we do, but we didn't. When a congregant asks for an important emergency meeting with you, it is for something truly emergent. And that is to tell you, it is too darn cold in the sanctuary. It is possible that they are asking you to change the temperature or to change the robes. Now, that's just my gift. In fact, Jonathan, our relationship has been a gift to me. And I appreciate all the ways that I have known you. And indeed, we are all saying the same thing, that he has been a dear, valued person to have, for a brief period, to call my student, for much longer to call my teacher, for someone who I worked for, my boss, my friend, and my rabbi. I came back to Hebrew Union College in 2011, right? We'll do the math together. I returned to the campus then to teach again, and the first student I had in my summer clinical pastoral education course, along with actual students, was their professor, Dr. Cohen. Now, thankfully, you had not been my professor. I think it would have been just beyond fathom to figure out how to move all of those identities around. But there is nothing more inspiring than for someone of Jonathan's incredible gifts to sit as a student with his students and to acknowledge the things that he wants to learn. And to be there and to show them and to show all of us that learning is what we do always, that we never stop, that there's never enough, and there's always something new, a new way to stretch. I watched you, Jonathan, do things I know you did not anticipate doing that summer, to sit with a woman for hours, holding her hand as she cried, and hearing all the words she did not say, and understanding just what she needed from you. You put in hours and hours of your spirit and your soul into that summer. Even as you were becoming the dean of the campus, I do remember being promised that that announcement, Dr. Ellenson, would not be made till he was done with the course in which he was enrolled with his students, but somehow in July he became dean as well. And so now they were sitting in a class with their professor and the dean, but we made it. And it was a hard summer in so many ways, and you shared of yourself, and you let yourself be with us in the ways that we could stretch and try and be there with you and with your family. And then, of course, from the moment that I arrived to teach, you were my teacher. And I say no more than that. What a gift to have him as your teacher. You are blessed. What a wonderful person you have been to work for. You are able to see things no one else sees. Sometimes you see numbers on a page of budget that no one else sees. But you make the work happen. You find ways to pull people together. You create ways for people to communicate and to cooperate and to grow and to change. And indeed, one of the greatest gifts has been to be your friend along with Yael and with your kids, to share 4th of Julys and to see the fireworks together, to be together on holy days, to have Ella and Yasha, and I'm not sure, Eden, if you ever got to this one, but to come over to the house as you waited for someone to come from a school activity and to eat brownies and to play with the dog and to pet the cat, right? Because your parents wouldn't let you have a cat. But we were friends, so you were friends to our cats and dogs and chickens as well. And then you became my rabbi as you led my family and I through some very difficult times, through our times of loss. And I didn't know you were the rabbi that you became for me. I didn't know the beautiful words that you could string together to make the hardest day in my life better, easier for just a moment. I didn't know when you came over the house and you sat with me and you tried to talk me through what was going to happen next, because we had experienced a loss upon a loss. And you helped say out loud what I was trying to understand. How would we handle all of the pain? You carried us through that time. And then we went back to work and continued the wonderful opportunity to teach and to grow together. You did one more thing. You filled the role just a little bit that Adina lost as she joined your family and had, I think you called yourself her big sister and a big brother who could be there in ways that I could not. What gifts. I am jealous of you here because you have the opportunity to be taught and to learn with and to share in times of joy and to be holding one another up in the difficult times, this wonderful man. Jonathan, I will say only one more thing to you, which is the blessing that I pray, that in the midst of all the brilliant teaching you do, all the logic and thoughts and creativity and plans, that you stop and you take time for what has been, we've already quoted him once, we will quote him again. Abraham Joshua Heschel called moments of radical amazement. That you stop and let yourself be there with what is happening. That you are able to embrace the moment. That you are able to say as often as possible, Mano Raha Makom. How awesome is this place? How filled with awe is this place? And God is right here, and now I know it. That moments of inspiration and mystery and radical amazement enter your life, and then you share them back with all of these people whose lives you will now share. May you go from strength to strength and from joy to celebrate to yet another occasion, another simcha. Amen. We are now honored to call forward Rabbi Steve Fox and Rabbi Richard Block to the bima, and we invite the entire congregation to please rise.
Jonathan, I'm so grateful for the privilege of sharing this sacred moment with you, with your family, and with our congregational family. You know, I do have a text that hasn't yet been shared. It's one that you and our other colleagues here will recognize as coming from a different sort of occasion. Baruch shepatarani me'onsho shelazeh. Blessed is the one who has absolved me of accountability for this congregation. It isn't entirely apposite for this occasion, but it does express something both of the gratitude that I feel for the privilege of having led this congregation along with my cherished colleagues and so many wonderful leaders and congregants, and something of the relief to know that the congregation is now in the hands of such a fine and capable rabbi, leader, teacher, and friend. That beautiful song, I'm Standing on the Shoulders of the One Who Came Before Me, which Cantor Kathy and Rob and Cheryl sang a few minutes ago, you'll hear again very soon when our latest class of confirmants takes their place in the chain of generations. And perhaps it will do for you as it did for me, move you to tears. It did every time for me. Because you and I, and we all know that that's true of every generation of Jews, of every generation of Jewish leaders, and certainly of the generations of this sacred, remarkable, visionary congregation. I never cease to be in awe of the dedication and sacrifice and leadership of those who came before. And as we pass the Torah to you, we acknowledge with gratitude your very special place in the chain of generations of this congregation. This congregation, Jonathan, as you know, is a visionary congregation. We see ourselves as a warm, welcoming synagogue family where each person matters, a congregation that cherishes its rich history and traditions and fosters a dynamic culture of innovation and imagination, a congregation that enables its members of all ages to experience inspiration and meaning by creating enduring personal relationships with each other, with the Torah, with God, with the Jewish people and the state of Israel, and through acts of justice and compassion. As we pass the Torah to you and consecrate you as senior rabbi of the congregation, we bless you with the privilege and obligation to help every day do what you can to see that vision ever more fully realized. At this very place on the Bima, I and our other clergy, and perhaps you now, have turned to the parents of our B'nai Mitzvah, who express a special prayer for the passing of the Torah. And I've always found these words inspirational. Into our hands, O God, you place your Torah to be held high by parents and children and taught by one generation to the next. Whatever has befallen us, our people have remained steadfast in loyalty to the Torah. It was carried into exile in the arms of parents that their children might not be deprived of their birthright. And now I pray, we say to these young people, that you may always be worthy of this inheritance. Take its teaching into your heart and in turn, pass it on to your children and those who come after you. May you be a faithful Jew, searching for wisdom and truth, working for justice and peace. Thus will you be among those who labor to bring nearer the day when God shall be one and God's children shall be one. As we pass the Torah to you and consecrate you as our senior rabbi, we vest in you and in partnership with your colleagues and lay leaders in this congregation the privilege and the responsibility of helping all of your students, whatever their age, to experience themselves as not just learners of Torah, but as teachers of Torah. And we're confident that you will do that. Jonathan, I know you're aware of the Midrash that at Sinai, the soul of every Jew who would ever be was present there. I feel tonight, as we consecrate you as our senior rabbi, that the soul of every Jew of the whole Jewish people comes to embrace you with power and with blessing, and to celebrate and express our appreciation with gratitude for the dedication and sacrifice of so many of our people of this congregation who created the heritage that we now entrust to you. They include the victims and survivors of the Holocaust, this Torah being one of the survivors. It includes the builders of the state of Israel and its defenders, and it includes every generation of our congregation. And so, we now indeed pass the Torah to you with blessing and with gratitude. And so, with the authority of our congregation's leaders, and in the name and memory of those who came before you and me to this sacred spot, we consecrate you as our senior rabbi. I hand to you the tradition of the Torah and all it represents, and I ask God's blessing on you in the traditional words of our Torah. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May the light of God's presence shine upon you and within you, and may God be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God show you favor and grant you your wonderful Yael, and your adorable children, Eden and Yasha and Ella. Blessing, fulfillment, joy, but above all, the blessing of shalom, of peace. Mazel tov.
At this time, we have a number of incredible clergy who are here joining us for the celebration. We invite all of you to please join us on the bima.
So as the clergy come to share a blessing with you, the same blessing shared by your predecessor, the rabbi of this temple, the past president of the Central Conference of American Rabbis, I take a moment as the CCR chief executive, the organization that publishes liturgy, provides continuing rabbinic education, importantly, also provides the placement services to congregations of the Reform movement. So I just want to say, as we're about to bless you, that this blessing began many months ago. Many months ago. Jonathan, in my 13 years, with 100 rabbis a year joining new congregations, I have seen nearly 1,300 transitions. That also means I've heard from, in one way or another, nearly 1,300 search committees. I want to say to Howard and Jane, and to the rest of the search committee, and to this entire holy congregation, that this is a search committee that led with integrity, with thoroughness, and with hope for the highest of aspirations for this community. And because they had the highest of aspirations, they found a rabbi to help fulfill and lead and partner with them in the years to come. We once talked at the Hebrew College before ordination that there's no greater blessing that we had in our lives than giving that blessing to the rabbis. They were students and then they became rabbis. Jonathan, you know there's no greater blessing than that bestowed upon you by all the clergy here. Your friends, rabbis, cantors, and others. So I ask all of you to please gather close. We will bless Jonathan Cohen, the new rabbi of this congregation. We will say the words together. Then I ask all of you to please take a moment, if you're comfortable, and close your eyes and feel those words as they will be chanted by the cantor of this congregation, part of your clergy team. So together, we first say the words, Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai pa'alecha v'yifnecha, Yisa Adonai pa'alecha v'yifnecha shalom.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom, shalom.
Please be seated.
It's my pleasure now to welcome forward our board president, Jane Joseph, and it says here, our executive director, Christy Yonkers. I'm only reading.
Yeah, right. You had to read it. I know. I'm pretty unfamiliar to you.
Tough acts to follow. As Temple President, it's my honor to speak to you this evening on behalf of the congregation. I'm filled with immense joy and pride as we enter into this sacred partnership with Rabbi Cohen. This installation is the culmination of months of planning and introspection. We wanted the installation to reflect who we are and what matters most to us. Rabbi Cohen explained that an installation is not about the rabbi, and it's not about the congregation. Rather, an installation marks the beginning of a sacred covenant, the opportunity to articulate the shared purpose that will guide us going forward. So what is our shared purpose? Rabbi Cohen has said, "We are in the business of producing Jewish lives." So simple and so profound, with layers of meaning about Jewish identity and Jewish learning, the search for spiritual meaning, and a commitment to our greater community. I invite each of you to ask Rabbi Cohen about this vision, because you will be moved and elevated to hear his response, just as I have been. Rabbi, we're a diverse congregation. Some of us are new members, others have been members for generations. We are young, we are old, we have simchas to celebrate and losses to grieve. We don't always agree, but we are a community. You are now our community, and this moment will be remembered for generations to come. Rabbi Cohen, in honor of this occasion, I am happy to announce that a beautiful cherry tree has been planted outside of your office. This tree will take root and grow, sprouting new branches and leaves, just as our sacred partnership will thrive with resilience and strength. Now for some important thank yous. To Christy Yonkers and her incredible staff. Our administrative and facility staff worked tirelessly to make this installation weekend special and meaningful. They demonstrate professionalism at its very best, and ours is a model of true collaborative partnership. We are so grateful. I also want to acknowledge our community leaders and dignitaries who are with us tonight. We are so honored that you are here to commemorate this important occasion with us. We are all part of the same community, and your presence here is a powerful reminder of the importance of being together and working together. I also want to thank Yael Senemo, Rabbi Cohen's wife and my friend, who is smart, caring, and oh so talented. You and your beautiful children have brought light to this congregation, and we cherish you. And finally, to our extraordinary clergy. Thank you for your brilliance and innovation, your steadiness, and your love of our community. Rabbi Klein, Rabbi Schlein, and Cantor Sibo, our congregation is privileged to have you as our leaders and our teachers. And to Rabbi Block, you embody the legacy of the temple. The symbolic passing of the Torah tonight is an image we will never forget. Thank you so much to you and to Susie for being here with us tonight.
Shabbat Shalom. As the executive director of this great synagogue, I invariably find myself in the position of following inspirational and moving speakers. For example, beautiful Devar, Rabbi. Now Christy Yonkers is going to present the financial projections. So unlike Rabbi Schwartz, I've never felt more at home than I do following all of the moving speakers this evening. I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to everyone who contributed time, talent, and treasure to this sacred celebration. Our congregants made this weekend happen. This is your celebration. The list of those who should be personally acknowledged is just too long to mention, and a lovely dessert reception is waiting. But I hope you will take the time to read each name in tonight's beautiful program. I must, however, acknowledge the incomparable creativity, vision, and tireless attention to detail of Heather Ross Lowenstein and Erwin Lowenstein. Our chairs of this installation weekend. You led a mighty team of generous congregants who volunteered an astounding number of hours to create an extraordinary celebration. And to Jane Joseph, our president and congregant-in-chief, your steadfast leadership, optimism, and compassion together form the thread that ties it all together. Thank you. On behalf of the staff, I would like to express how deeply honored we feel to have the pleasure to work in sacred partnership with Rabbi Jonathan Cohen in carrying forward his vision and the vision of Reform Judaism. I have a quote that nobody else used. In 1910, former President Theodore Roosevelt famously said, "It is not the critic who counts. Not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. We, the professional staff, look forward to erring with you, Jonathan, to coming short, to striving valiantly, to knowing great enthusiasm and spending our time on worthy causes, to sometimes failing with you, with the promise of experiencing high achievement in our advancement of Reform Judaism in people's lives, in community, and for the benefit of the world. We are most certainly in the arena, thanks to your bold leadership, and feel incredible privilege to dare greatly with you.
So it is past 9. So I am speaker not number 4, but number 8. So every text has been used. And so after Rabbi Schwartz's speech, I'm not even sure you know what I'm saying. Thank you. I'm going to depart from what were going to be my comments for this evening to let you know that the honor that you have bestowed upon me today is one that I could not have imagined and that I wish I could say I had dreamed of, but I did not. I am grateful, I am honored, and I am humbled. I am excited and intimidated all at the same time. Thank you for this trust. Thank you for the love. Thank you for the embrace. Thank you for the appreciation, especially on this day. As we were speaking, as we were praying, and as Rabbi Bloch mentioned those words of the passing of the Torah from one generation to the other, it again occurred to me that this is a particularly special moment in time, in the context of Jewish history. And I want to share a moment, a glimpse of that significance with you right now. As you may know, this weekend, the 17th, 18th, 19th of May, the 20th day of Iyar, 21st and 22nd days of Iyar, mark the beginning of a dark chapter in our people's history and in the history of the world. This was the time, in the year 1096, of a new and different kind of massacre of the Jews in the city of Worms, in the context of the First Crusade. I want to take you back to this moment for a second. You know, the Jews had lived in Worms, they had lived in Mainz, they had lived in all these places for hundreds of years by now. In some of these places, including Worms, for more than 400 years. Worms had become a city under Roman rule, and then became a free city under the Holy Roman Empire. The First Crusade was an idea that was floated by a pope in 1095, and in 1096, the crusade actually started. Part of it was called the Paupers' Crusade, the Poor People's Crusade. But in reality, this crusade brought together people who had no property, along with people who had great property, along with clergy, along with scholars. Tens of thousands of people. An army that descended on the Rhine Valley. And for the very first time in Jewish history, this weekend, in 1096, the Jews locked themselves up in the palace of the bishop Adalbert II in the city of Worms, paid bribes and gave gifts to Bishop Adalbert II, believing that they would be protected, to be undone by an army of more than 7,000 that would break down the city gates, that would enter through the city, that would defeat the soldiers of the bishop, that would enter into the palace, that would not be mollified, and that would slaughter every man, woman, and child who was Jewish, whom they found in that palace, more than 800 people over a period of 24 hours. As much as people tried to hide, there was no hiding. There was no escape. It was a moment that was significant because the hatred, the anti-Semitism that Jews experienced in that moment was not one that could somehow be negotiated. It was not somehow an anti-Semitism or a hatred that would somehow be mollified. There could be no bribe. There was nothing to do. It was an uncompromising hatred. And that moment, this weekend in 1096, that first massacre of its kind, launched 1,000 years of hatred, of anti-Semitism, the results of which we see to this very day. And in 1850, this congregation, this Temple-Tifereth Israel, was established not because the Jews of Cleveland or anywhere else believed that this kind of hatred or anti-Semitism would go away, but because they would stand for justice, they would stand for integration, they would stand for equality, and they would stand for love. They would stand for community in the face of hatred. They would stand for acceptance in the face of prejudice. They would stand for equality in the face of discrimination. They would stand for love in the face of hate. And it is this love that brings us together here tonight. It is this love and this passion for justice, for community, for fairness, for goodness, that hope, that faith, that while we may not defeat hate, we can counter it. That while we may not end discrimination, we can diminish it. That while we may not completely defeat hatred, we can increase love. We can do it together. I say this in the presence of a person whom I call my minister from Cincinnati, the Reverend Mitra Jafarzadeh from St. John's Unitarian Church, and in the presence of my Imam, Ismail Chartier from Cincinnati, and my fellow clergy, rabbis and cantors in this room. We are in this together. We're in this together today. Whether it is about gender, or about color, or about religion, or about origin. This, Rabbi Bloch, is the warm and welcoming congregation you have shepherded throughout 18 years of your rabbinate to build this edifice that today we celebrate. My friends, I'm honored beyond words to undertake the task of working to produce better lives for ourselves and for our neighbors together, to combating prejudice and hatred together, to holding each other's hands as we suffer loss and as we celebrate. may we witness, experience, and share moments of joy for many years to come. May this be our will and the will of the transcendent. And let us together say, Amen. Let us now turn to page 282 for the Aleinu L'Shabeach. I invite you to please rise. You may be seated. At this time, before we exit this sanctuary, we recall those people on whose shoulders we stand, who are no longer with us, those whom we love, and those whose memories we cherish. We especially remember those who were laid to rest this past week: Robert A. Elrad, Rosalind Glaub, Philip C. Sugarman, and Barbara E. Zeldis. We also remember those who were laid to rest within the last 30 days: Dorothy R. Davis, Charlotte Greenblatt, Sima Gurevich, Alex Lev, Sarah Wong, J. Howard Clark, Sandy Eisen, Howard S. Israel, Robert S. Korak, Rita Orens, Louis Radzelli, Marilyn Rockman, Philip Singer, and Lois Sassner. We also remember those whose yahrzeits occur at this time: Jeanette Julian Stern Abramson, Shirley Appisdorf, Samuel Barnett, Max S. Bergman, Donald M. Blauschild, Alfred Brock, George J. Chertoff, Kitty Gurin Clark, Leonard Collins, David Dorby, Nathan L. Dorby, Joan Dinowitz, Goldie Dorsey, Arthur Elsner, Irma Flesheim, Harvey K. Fox, Edith W. Gans, Marion B. Garson, Jura Galen, Anna Grossman Geiger, Anna Goldman, Howard Greenfield, Josephine Greenfield, Samuel L. Haver, Sylvester Hertz, Lillian Gilbert Hockman, Anne Candy Nickman Jacobson, Adi Kasevitz, Dan F. Klein, Edwin F. Klein, Edwin K. Klein, Israel Klein, Zelda Krenitz, Edward A. Leidner, Philip A. Leiner, Joyce Levine, William H. Loveman, Jack Mandel, Jean Rose Monas, Alan Richard Newman, William E. Newman, Loyal Fried Plosko, Julius Pollack, Gilda Pollack, Gertrude Sherby Rand, Margaret E. Reinheimer, Samuel W. Richman, Lea Kaufman-Rosen, Jetta Rosenberg, Lena Rosenfeld, Audrey S. Rosenthal, Libby Samuels, Edna F. Schaffner, Leon Schaffner, Joan Schmertz, Stephen Robert Schreibman, Ida Schwartz, Irma R. Seed, Elise Seligman, Joseph Simon, Hermine B. Scully, Donald Spitz, Jenny Spitz, Virginia Spivak, Betty L. Stone, Barbara Force Strauss, Julius D. Weitz, Ralph Wiesenberger. If there are names of people whom you are mourning that I did not read in this list, please mention these names now so that we may utter the Kaddish in their honor together. At this time, I would like to invite our congregation to please rise as we prepare to utter the Kaddish. Page 294. Please join me. Yitgadal v'yitkadash mei Rabbi. Be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechonu v'yomeichonu v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'bizman karev v'imru amen. יהי שמי רבא מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה, בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה עד אמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבא מן שמיה וחיים, עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו. הוא יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. May the source of peace send peace and comfort to all who mourn, and let us together say, Amen.
Will you please be seated? It's my pleasure and honor now to welcome to the Bima Rabbi Cohen's brother Gilad and his sister Netta, who are going to read a message from Rabbi Cohen's parents.
President Jane Joseph, Rabbi Roger Klein and Stacy Schlein, Cantor Catherine Wolf-Sibo, Director Christy Yonkers, Installation Chairs Heather and Erwin Lowenstein, Event Chairs, Honors Guests, family members and friends, ladies and gentlemen. We, Jonathan's parents, Eliyahu and Kitty, deeply regret that we cannot attend this installation at Temple-Tifereth, Israel. We send our love on this important occasion and wish to share a few personal reminiscences of Jonathan. News of your position and installation as rabbi came as no surprise. The words of William Wordsworth, "The child is the father of the man," pertain to you, Jonathan. We recall an episode when Jonathan was not yet 4 years old. As we both worked long hours, we had registered both children at daycare nearby. Returning from the center in the afternoon, holding hands of his 3-year-old sister, Netta, he stood at our door and declared, "We're not going back there again." He had reached the right decision, of course. From an early age, his master light shaped his seeing and his courage to stand up for his convictions. Jonathan's interest in the Jewish world outside of Israel dates back to the 1970s. Jonathan encountered Jewish world in France at the young age of 5 when his father was assigned to serve at our Paris embassy. He was filled with curiosity and in the religious observance of modern Orthodox French admiral who befriended our children, as well as in the liberal observance of Parisian Jews whose synagogue on Rue Copernic had been attacked just prior to our arrival in France. Back home, 4 years later, a newcomer in our neighborhood school, 9-year-old Jonathan, readapted well to life in our secular Israeli family, absorbing Jewish traditions as in a humanist context. Like his siblings during family meals, he took an active part in the talk of the day on Israeli events, Jewish world affairs, contributing to our conversations. Never afraid to express a different opinion, clearly and logically presenting his arguments, we remarked he could be a lawyer or rabbi one day. Little did we know this would come true.
As his father comes from a long line of rabbis on 2 sides of his family, stories and memories from generations past became equally part of Jonathan's life. For his bar mitzvah, he was prepared by his late grandfather, Chaim Cohen. This formative rite of passage was a memorable experience, not least because it was held in the Jerusalem synagogue where his great-great-grandfather, a scholar and rabbi, had prayed 50 years earlier, and where his father and older brothers' bar mitzvahs had been held. Shortly thereafter, in his 13th year, we were assigned to a post in Washington, and Jonathan had to change school once more. With his younger sister, that's me, he enrolled and attended as junior high and then high school student the Charles E. Smith Jewish Day School in Rockville, Maryland. It was his first encounter with the diversity of American Jewry. His interest in religious history grew. Since that time, it has remained a constant. Following his military service and legal studies in England, Jonathan returned to the UK to write a PhD in Jewish and comparative law before joining Hebrew Union College in 1998. From then on, Jonathan's life and thinking linked with the Reform movement. For 20 years, he combined leadership, academic research, learning, and teaching with community outreach. The values of the Reform movement, by now so dear to him, and the love of community led him to find the vocation of his life in this great temple. In his journey, Jonathan has been fortunate to have the support and love of many around him, not least his accomplished and gifted Yael, and their 3 wonderful children, Eden, Yasha, and Elisheva. We are not biased, we assure you. Although we cannot be there, in our thoughts and in our heart, we are with you at this installation and send our warm wishes to Jonathan, Yael, Eden, Yasha, and Elisheva. We are confident that you, Jonathan, will follow your vision. You have the wisdom to lead, the ardor of your convictions, the temper of mind, the empathy to listen and draw strength and inspiration from this great community at Temple-Tifereth, Israel.
It's now a pleasure for me to welcome forward members of the Cohen and Senemau families to lead us in the Motzi. Yael and Eden and Yasha and Ella and everybody. Not everybody.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen. We're going to conclude with the singing of Adon Olam. You can find the words on page 321.
Rabbi, I hope it will be okay. Will people be upset if we only do 3 verses? I just want to mention this rendition is by a member of our congregation, Jay Singer. It's a really fun Adon Olam. We will only do verses 1, 3, and 5, and we hope you will join us.
Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra le'et nasa b'chetzo kol azai melech shemo nikra. Hey! La 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 ya la 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 והוא אחד ואין שני, להמשיל לו להכירה, בלי ראשית בלי תכלית, ולא האור והמצווה. היי! יא לה לה יא לה 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 יא לה 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 יא לה 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 יא לה 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 יא לה לה
בידו אבירוכי
באין תישן והעירה ויהי ברוכי בראייתי אדוני ריבנו. Last time! Oh! יא לה 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 יא לה 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 יא לה 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 יא לה 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 יא לה יא לה יא לה 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 יא לה 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 לה.
What a wonderful evening for all of us. So great for all of us to be together. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Oh.